Okay, welcome to summer session 4, and we're going to do supply and demand and some consumer surplus here. Um, Again, I would take the outline that I sent for summer assignment 4 and use it. It makes it easier to follow along. The end of the last session and this session is really the foundation for all economics. All right, we're going to do a quick review. Normally, I give you 2 or 3 minutes to look at all the terms. You could stop the video here, look at the terms, write down the things you know. Okay, if you're back, I'm going to go over these. Scarcity is unlimited wants with limited resources. Everything has scarcity, but unlimited wants with limited resources. The shifters of the production possibilities curve, there are 4 of them. Change in quantity or quality of resources, change in technology, change in human resources, which would be like training, and then change in capital stock being equipment, machines, things that make things. All 4 of those, and only those 4, will shift the production possibilities curve. Shifters of demand is timer, pace, income. Remember, for income, there's normal goods. A normal good is when income up, demand shifts right. And then there's inferior goods, income up, demand shifts left. Market size, expectation, related goods, which are substitutes and complements. Substitute would be like Coke for Pepsi. A complement would be hot dog buns and hot dogs. Shifters of supply are rat nest. Resource prices is anything that goes into making, say, a shirt. Wages are a resource price. That's one that's sometimes tricks guys. Alternative production, I can make sweaters or hats at my factory. I'm going to make the one that makes the most money. Technology, number of sellers, expectations, subsidies, which generally shift supply right, and taxes, which generally shift supply left. And the difference between quantity demanded and demand. A change in demand, an increase in demand, shifts the whole demand curve either right or left. A difference in quantity demanded slides up and down and is usually generated by a change in price. If you had any questions with these, you could always email me, as with anything else on this video. All right, let's put supply and demand together. All right, here we go. Now, I think we did this in the last video, but as a quick review, this is the equilibrium. What is equilibrium? When quantity supplied, which is at $3.30, and quantity demanded, which is also at $3.30, that is called equilibrium, where quantity supplied equals quantity demanded. Now, sometimes that doesn't happen. So like if the price increases to $4, what do you have? You have what we call disequilibrium. Anytime you're above the equilibrium, you're going to have a surplus. And what do we mean by that? At $4, the suppliers are supplying, say, 40 shirts, but people are only demanding 20. So you have an extra 20 shirts. So that is your surplus, right? 40 quantity supplied minus the 20 of quantity demanded gives you a surplus of 20. Now, if you have 20 extra shirts and you can't sell them at $4, what are you going to do? You're going to lower the price to $3 to get to the equilibrium. All right. Now, here, again, it's the same thing at $5. You could have a surplus. It's above the equilibrium. Quantity supplied is 50. Quantity demanded is 10. 50 minus 10 is going to give you 40. Now, pause this for a second and tell me, what are you going to have if there is a disequilibrium price of 2? Okay, glad you're back. At 2, you're supplying 20 shirts, but people want 50. Okay, So you have a shortage. You have 20 shirts, people want 50. You have a shortage of 30, right? That anytime you're below the equilibrium, you're going to have a shortage. Now, if people are dying for these shirts and I don't have much, I'm going to raise the price. And that's how I'm going to get back to the equilibrium. Okay. Now, when we're doing supply and demand, all right, the first thing before the change, draw supply and demand, regular graph, label the equilibrium price. So like here, I'll just go back. There would be supply and demand equilibrium price, $3. Okay. The change, all right, so when they give you a scenario, does it affect supply or demand? Supply, generally the producer and cost. Demand, the consumer and benefits, which determine, all right, does it shift something from rat nest to timer and which one? Does it increase or decrease the supply occurred? After the change, label new equilibrium. Remember, you put an arrow and then your new equilibrium. What happens to price? Increase or decrease? What happens to quantity? I'm going to do the first one together with you, and then I'll let you do the other four by yourself. Remember, this is the hamburger market. So price of sushi, a substitute increases. Well, if the price of sushi increases, people are going to be buying less sushi and more hamburgers. So the demand for hamburgers will increase. So I'm going to have that, right? Now, you're probably saying it is missing an arrow. I put the arrow there. I also, and you don't like to put arrow there to show me price up, quantity up. I put it on the side. Price up, quantity up. That's what I'd like you to do for the next four. Okay. So it was a substitute that's time or related goods, right? Um, because the price of sushi increases, people are going to be buying less sushi and more hamburgers. There was the change in demand. All right, let me erase this. I'm going to go back to the scenario so you can see them. All right, I'll give you like, pause the video now, do the graphs and do everything like I said. Give me what happens to price and quantity, put the arrows in, label everything perfect, get into good habits, pause it, and I'll give you 3 or 4 minutes to do these. Okay, glad you're back. Let's go over the second one. New grilling technology cuts production. All right, it's production. I know it's supply then. All right, new grilling technology, that's rat nest. All right, increase supply, right? Because technology is better. So I'm going to be able to supply things at better prices. So I'm going to just fix this up a little because it doesn't have everything I'd like. Notice price is going down from P1 to P2. Quantity increase. All right. And then I put that here with price and quantity, right? You'd have price down, quantity up. All right. Let's look at next one, see what we got here. Price of burgers fall from $3 to $1. Price, that's not rat nest. That's not timer. That's going to be a change in quantity demanded. Here at PE, would be the $3. Now we're going to $1. So what are we going to have? We're going to have a shortage, right? Demanded minus supply. We're going to have a shortage temporarily for hamburgers. So this is not a shifter, not a change in demand. It's a change in quantity demanded and a change in quantity supplied. All right. You'd have price down, you'd have quantity demanded. If I put here up, and I have quantity supplied down. And again, with any of these, if you have a question as you're watching them, please send me an email. All right, let's see what we have next. Price of ground beef triples. All right, what do we use ground beef for? We use it for making hamburgers. All right, so therefore, it's a resource. Well, if the cost of making hamburgers increases, the producer's going to make less money. Therefore, they're going to want to supply less. So there, again, I have my supply shifting left, again, resource. Notice the arrow here for P1, Q1, and then I put it on the side right here. I just look up, price up, quantity down. All right. Human finger found in ground beef. All right. That's going to be taste and preference. And since that is kind of going to be disgusting to a lot of people, the demand for hamburgers will decrease. There you go. There's your arrow showing P1 down, Q1 down, the arrows showing your shift. All right. Those are 5 examples of how you shift supply and demand. All right. And then here again at the new price and quantity, you have price down, quantity down. Okay. Now, I didn't explain this clearly probably before, but again, it's where the new demand curve intersects the old supply curve. That's the new equilibrium. Let's erase this. See what we got in store for us after. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to try to take that graph and talk about these 2 topics, consumer and producer surplus. Okay. I don't know if we're going to get into the price ceiling or the government controls, but we will definitely do the consumer and producer surplus. All right. So if you have $200 to buy shoes, what might happen at the mall? You go to the mall, and if you see shoes for $160 that you like, you're going to buy them. All right. If you see shoes for $230 and all you have is $200, you can't buy it. All right. So consumer surplus is what you're willing to spend, $200, compared to what you did spend. So again, consumer surplus is the difference between what you're willing to pay and what you actually pay. So consumer surplus equals buyer's maximum minus price. So like before, I'm willing to pay $200. The price of my sneakers is $160. My consumer surplus is $40. Now, consumer surplus really is not going to be negative because I'm not going to spend $220 for something if my maximum was $200. The surplus is the difference between the price the seller received and how much they're willing to sell it for. And how much they're willing to sell it for is usually their cost. So producer surplus equals price minus seller's minimum. So with those sneakers, the seller might be willing to sell it for $120. He sold it for 160, so he made 40. Notice you could have a consumer surplus and a producer surplus. Both of them could be a surplus. Okay. All right, so you want to buy a truck. So you go to the local dealership. You're willing to spend up to 20,000 for a truck. The seller's willing to sell this truck for no less than 15. After some negotiation, you buy the truck for 18. Give you a minute, pause this, come up with what you think is the answers. Okay, glad to have you back. So the buyer's maximum is 20,000. We saw that. The seller's minimum is 15. The price is 18. Consumer surplus is the 20,000. The maximum you're willing to spend minus the price 18, 2,000. The surplus is the price 18 minus the seller's minimum 15 is 3,000. Notice again, both consumers and producers win, winner, chicken dinner, and that is producer and consumer surplus. Now, here's how I'm going to graph it. Everything above the price or above the equilibrium and below the demand curve, blue, is consumer surplus. Everything below the equilibrium and above the supply is producer. Now, why? Here at $8, someone's willing to spend $8. The price is 4. That's consumer surplus. Here, someone's willing to spend $7. The price is 4. Consumer surplus. 6, 4, 5, 4, and finally 4, 4, all consumer surplus. All right. So people are willing to spend all these prices, but they're only spending 4. So that's why the area of this triangle becomes consumer surplus. Here, just willing to sell for $1, sells for 4, producer surplus. Willing to sell for 2, sells for 4, producer. Willing to sell for 3, sells for 4. And that's why everything below is producer surplus. So graphically, and this goes with all graphs, above the price, below demand is consumer. Below the price and above supply is the producer. All right. Now, I'm going to give you a minute or 2 minutes here and allow you to figure out both the producer and consumer surplus and total. And the total is just going to be consumer plus producer surplus. Come back in 2 minutes. Okay. Now, consumer surplus, we know, is above the price, below demand, this triangle right here. Now, remember from our math class, the area is 1/2, and people forget the half a lot. Base times height. So for the consumer, height is 10 minus 5, which is 5. The base is 0 times 10. So that's 10 minus 0, which will be 10. So that's going to be 50 divided by 2 is 25. 5 times 10 divided by 2 is 25. Now, for the producer, it's 5 minus 1 for the height, which is 4. The same base, you had 0 to 10 is 10 times 10 is 40 over 2 is 20. So I've got 25 for the consumer, 20 for the producer, and a total of 45. Okay. There is your consumer again. There is your producer. we got 25, we got 20, we got 45. All right. Now, consumer and producer surplus will run through out the class and all the types of different graphs we use. So it's a very basic procedure to find it, but it comes up a lot. And it's, again, I said last class and this class, summer class 3 and 4 are the foundations for AP economics. Which of the following is true if there's a decrease in the supply of ice cream? Take a minute and figure it out. Okay, glad you're back. All right. I think using your graphs always sorry, it just sometimes hard to write. Using your graphs always helps you. All right. So there is, before anything, a look at consumer surplus, right? Above the price, below demand. Now, what are they saying? Which of the following is true if there's a decrease in the supply of ice cream? Well, I know a decrease in the supply is going to shift me this way. So I'm going to shift supply left. And now my new equilibrium, and this is my consumer surplus now above the price and above and below demand. And then let me look at my original consumer surplus, which was this triangle above the price, below demand. So there is a decrease in consumer surplus. B is the answer. Again, one of the things that I would say is make graphs your friends. Use the graphs, and it makes it easier to figure out some of these problems. And take a minute and look at this. Okay, I'm glad you're back. The answer would be E, the sum of the individual consumer surpluses for all buyers. Okay. All right. I think we have time, so I'm going to go over price floors and price ceilings. Okay. I think of this as an upside down house. The floor is above the equilibrium, where the floors are generally below. All right. So a price floor is like the minimum legal price a seller can think minimum wage. That's a good example of a price floor. The price floor here is $4. That's the least people could pay for a bushel of corn. Okay. You cannot legally, all right. Now, for it to be binding and effective, meaning for a price floor to be binding, it has to be above the equilibrium. Because if I set the price floor at $2, right, and that's the minimum, it's already selling for $3, so that didn't help any. So the first thing I look at, if it's a price floor, for it to be binding and effective, it has to be above the equilibrium. Otherwise, we're just going to use the equilibrium price. And notice, if we're above the equilibrium, we talked about this before, we're going to have a surplus. People are supplying 40 bushels of corn, and people are only demanding 20 bushels. So price floors give a surplus. Now, because there's a floor, you cannot go down to $3. It stays at the minimum of floor at 4, and you have a surplus of 20 bushels. Now, does this policy help corn producers? For the people who are selling their corn, it does, because now they're selling at $4, but you're selling less corn. So, at first, if you looked at the industry, 3 times 30 is 90. Now, 4 times 20 is 80. So, total revenue for the industry is down. So, a lot of times when you use price floors and price ceilings, the intent is good, but it always doesn't help the people it's intended to. Okay. Again, for it to be effective, it has to be above the equilibrium. Now, a price ceiling. And I think, like, if you remember last year, I came into your classes and I probably did this. All right. If you set a price ceiling at $2, again, upside down house, the ceiling's below the equilibrium. All right. That's the most you could charge for gasoline. At first, that sounds great. But here's the problem. At $2 a gallon, people are demanding 50 gallons and we're only supplying 20. So what's going to happen is when you go to the gas station, either there's going to be a long line or you're not going to have gas. Like the gas station is going to be out of gas. So all of that might not be worth the $2. What happens a lot in price ceilings is you have black markets. What do I mean by that? That means like people selling gas, like stealing gas and selling it on the side. But here, if it's below the equilibrium, we learned that earlier, we're going to have a shortage, right? You don't have to memorize these. People are demanding 50, you only have 20, you're short 30. Okay. Now, let's take a quick look at consumer and producer surplus. If there is consumer and producer surplus before either a ceiling or a floor has been put in. Okay. Let's see, can you do this on your own? Can you figure out consumer or producer surplus after you put in the binding price floor? How do I know it's binding? It's a floor, it's above the equilibrium. I'll give you a minute. Okay, glad you're back. All right, now to me, the key is right here where quantity demanded crosses the floor, I put a line. That's the quantity. That's how much we're going to sell, right? Because even though we're supplying more, people only are demanding this. Now, what's the rule? Above the price, below demand. There's your consumer surplus. Below the price, above supply. There's your producer. Now notice, it gets cut off at the quantity, right? Because it can't go further. You're only selling Q floor. So that builds your wall. So that's your producer. Now, this deadweight triangle right in here, we would call that deadweight loss. Why is it? That's because the price floor went up and it drove people out of the market. You went from QE to Q floor. You're selling less. These people, there is no more consumer surplus. So these people made consumer plus producer surplus, the market, the total surplus less because they left the market. That's deadweight loss. Okay. Anytime you see deadweight loss, it's inefficiency in the market. All right. The inefficiency, again, is caused by prices going up and driving some people out of the market. Now, let's see, could we do it? All right. Price ceiling. give you a minute and let's see, could you come back with the graph of price ceiling? Okay, glad you're back. Now let's do the same thing as I said before. Get your border. So here, the QS, that's the most you're gonna sell. Even though people are demanding over here, you don't have this to sell. So I'm gonna set my wall at QS. All right. Now, what's the rule? Above the price, below demand is consumer surplus. There it is. Below the price and above supply is producer. That triangle again is deadweight loss. Now, here, the inefficiency comes a different way because prices are so low. Suppliers don't want to supply at that because they can't make money. Some suppliers can't make money, so they're not supplying at that. So there is where you get your inefficiency. Okay. There is, again, total surplus is down. So anytime you have deadweight loss, you have inefficiency. Almost any time you have government intervention, you have inefficiency. All right. We're going to stop here. So today, just to summarize, we did supply and demand, the shifters, and we did price disequilibriums. We also did consumer and producer surplus. Okay. All right. If you had any questions on this video, again, please email me, and thank you for your attention.